Shalom, everyone. This is Brian Israel Newman from Hebrew Hearts Ministry. Your first question is probably, wow, why is that guy so handsome? But that's not your first question. It's probably, wow, what is a grown man holding a giant teddy bear? And the reason I'm holding a giant teddy bear is to talk about the Father's blessing. We live in an absolutely fatherless culture, which breaks the heart of God. Biblically, it's an utter tragedy to be fatherless. It is a horrifying thought to a mother that her children might be fatherless, or for the children to be fatherless, or to a man that his children might be left fatherless, or even to the community, to the church, to the synagogue, to the nation. I mean, that was the curse of curses, was fatherlessness. And now we've accepted it as normal, and just every day, and that's just life, and it'll be okay. But it's not okay. It's not. Even if financially somehow it's okay, it's not okay. And when we relegated it to being okay, we kind of pushed under the rug all the spiritual damage, the emotional damage, the physical damage even, that causes for girls and boys. And it affects people differently in different ages of life, but boys that don't have a father when they're teenagers are greatly affected. Like in scriptural times, between the ages of 5 and 13, a boy was almost exclusively with his father. Because about 13, 14, 15, you're grown up and you get married and you have your own household. And you turn 20, serve in the military. When you turn 30, you can be a priest. But between 5 and 13, the boy really, really needed his father. And also in studies, in psychology studies, if a boy is not spending significant amounts of time with his mother between 0 and 5, he grows to be very, very aggressive, very hostile, no impulse control, have a lot of issues if he's not around his mother from 0 to 5. But then 5 to 13, he's to be around his father. And girls are very similar. 0 to 5, they be around mom a lot, but 5 to 13, in Hebrew culture, they spend a lot more times with their mom, but they'd also need that father's protection and father's investment in them. Because what a father does is a father gives a name. And without a name, we never know who we are. When we don't know who we are, we constantly search for identity. We search for validation and identity. In scriptural times, like you might be Ben Ezra, Peter Ben Ezra. Peter might be a bad example. It's not Hebrew. Simon Ben Ezra. Simon, son of Ezra. Son of. Your whole identity was son of. Or maybe Abigail Bat Ezra. Abigail, daughter of Ezra. But your whole identity was who your father was. Your father gave you your identity. And like in Hebrew called in the Bible, nothing existed. It was just void and empty and formless until it had a name. And anything without a name will search for a name. Anyone without a name will search for identity. They will search for it in magazines, and they will look for gang members to tell them who they are, that they belong to that gang. That gang gives them a name. They're a Crip, they're a Blood, they're an Aryan, they're wherever they are. The gang has given them a name. Their father wasn't there to give them his name, so this gang gave them a name. Or if it's a girl, she will find some man to give her some kind of name. It might be a really bad name, but there will be a father figure, there will be a man giving her a name of some kind. For a boy, there will be a father or a group of boys, a group of men giving him a name of some kind. And all throughout scriptures, we see that this naming process of when Benjamin was born, his mother Rachel was in travail. She was in great suffering. She knew she was going to die. She named him Ben-Oni, which means son of suffering, basically. So this child would grow up the rest of his life. His name would be son of suffering. His name would be, you ruined my life. You caused me to die. You brought nothing but suffering. That would be his identity. But his father had intervened. His father intervened. And then Benjamin. Benjamin, son of the right hand, son of favor, son of strength. Son that is loved. And Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. John the Baptist is about to be named something else. But an angel of God loosened the tongue of John's father So he could name the son, name the child. Well, he wrote it down. He wrote it down. When he named him correctly, then he could speak again. But it was this naming, a father giving a name and giving a blessing was so important to God that the father of John the Baptist, Zechariah, could not speak again until God named him. Until Zechariah, until the father named him, he wasn't allowed to speak. It's very, very important to God that children be named by their father. It is not just name on the birth certificate or your last name. When a father gives you a name, your father looks into you and he declares who you are, who you truly are, who you're made to be. He speaks identity into you. He speaks life into you. He speaks purpose into you. And the mother comes, and the mother supports all those things and reminds you of those things and encourages those things. But the father is the originator of that name. Yahweh named Adam. Adam named Eve, and Adam named all the animals. But the originator of that name it wasn't the mother, it wasn't Eve that named all the animals, it was Adam. And it wasn't Eve that named Adam, it was Adam that named Eve. And Eve came along and she supported that identity, but she didn't originate it. But so often now we have a fatherless generation with no one to name them. And sometimes we do have physical fathers, but they're not emotionally present. They aren't spiritually present, either because they just straight choose not to be, which I think is rare, or because they never had a father who was emotionally, physically present. They don't understand the concept, and they never had someone show them the concept. Like I grew up, nobody in my family had a concept of that. There was a sort of pride in the last name, which maybe is a Southern thing, and we carry that a little bit. But most of the culture doesn't have this concept of your name is important, and your father gives you your name. And your father should be physically, emotionally, and spiritually there to name you, not just give you a last name and a birth certificate and run away, but to every day give you a name. And sometimes fathers give us bad names. They might give a girl a name like ugly, or instead of beautiful. And they might give a boy a name like useless instead of strong. They might give us names that don't fit. And in Jewish culture in the Middle Ages, it was the Holy Spirit gives your parents your true name, your real name, and then the parents have to listen to that name and have to give you the name you really are. A lot of times they missed it. So in Revelation 2:17, we see that Yeshua gives everyone that is his a white stone name. Then no one knows it but him, because he's the only Yeshua, or Jesus to the Christian church, is the only one who actually knows who you truly, truly are. And we have fathers put in our life, either physical fathers or spiritual fathers, who are supposed to catch on to that name, or supposed to catch a glimpse of it, or have an understanding of it, and supposed to give that name to us as well. And then our mothers are supposed to back it up. But most people, that just didn't happen. But when we get to the kingdom, everyone will get their white stone name, and the name on the white stone is who you really are. But while we're living on this earth, we need to know it too. And a lot of people aren't in position to give us that name. And not just a name, but also a blessing. Because the Father's blessing is this recurrent theme all throughout Scripture. The Father had to be there to bless the child. And the blessing just isn't a ceremony. It's a statement, it's a declaration. It declares to the individual this in a powerful, concise, indisputable way. In that moment, this is who you really are. No matter what the world says, no matter what your fear says, no matter what the enemy says, this is who you really, truly are at the end of the day. And there's also a mark of protection. You're going around, some people in a gang country, they might wear a blue bandana to show they're protected by the street gang, so the ones in the red bandana will leave them alone. Or throughout history, you might wear some kind of insignia to show you belong to a certain family, a certain tribe, a certain group. So you had their protection. It shows you're under their protection, under their authority, under their covering, and you belong there. And that's what a blessing shows, is protection, provision, covering, belonging. And if a child doesn't have that blessing, even as a grown-up, you're almost like a target for the enemy. It's like, oh, that person doesn't know who they are. So the enemy sees that, oh, that person doesn't know who they are. So let's send some minions over there to harass them and to give them a different identity. Identity is like a vacuum. Everybody ends up with one. You don't just go without an identity. So if the Father isn't there to give identity, the world will give identity. The world will find one, or the enemy will send people to bring one to that person. So if we don't bless our children and give them a father's blessing and name them, then the enemy will do it for us, or the world will do it for us. But most often, the enemy will do it for us in one way or the other, not in their birth certificate, but in their mind. They will take on whatever the world says they are and says they should be, because a name is something you live up to. It's something you strive for all the time. And the enemy will give them goals, or we will give them goals. My youngest daughter is Shema, Israel, and Shema means hear and obey. She's somehow the one that doesn't want to listen. And Aliana is the older one, and Aliana means please return, and she's the one that likes to run off. So every time I say their name, though, I'm giving them an instruction, and I'm calling them up to Aliana, come back. Shema, listen and obey. But we almost named Aliana Isabella, having no idea what it meant in our flesh when I was married. But the Spirit told both of it, gave my ex-wife a name for her, for Aliana, gave her mother a name for her, Aliana, and then we gave her this one Shema. And one day I'll have a child named Joseph Gabriel, or Gabriel Zion, one of the two. But I knew someone, and that I think still going to be my future somehow, but we were given Joseph Gabriel for that future child. But the Spirit gives a name. And if we might name my daughter Isabella, that would imply certain things about her, certain standards to live up to, certain expectations she would try to meet. But God intervened and has named her Aliana. And a lot of people, this kind of blessing concept scares them. You don't walk up to a stranger and say, hey, can you bless me? But I think if you're a pastor or a leader or a father or an uncle or a grandfather, maybe even an older brother, I think it's a good thing to give a blessing to a child, any child in your life that you're close to that parents will allow, or any younger person you have influence over. And if you're an older person, even someone it's midlife, if you're elderly or you're older, you're in golden years, do it for someone in midlife. If you're someone in midlife, do it for a young professional. If you're a young professional, do it for a teenager. Or if you're young, do it for your daughter, your granddaughter, your son, your grandson, your niece, your nephew, your cousin, your little cousins. The youth group at church, you can do as a group. The children at church, just line them up and bless them. And I want to not only show you how to do this in a way. John Paul Jackson has a great series on it. I'll put a link in the comments. Or he shows how to do it. I'm just kind of passing that on to a different audience, but to a break audience. I'm going to show you how to do it, but I also want to pray this blessing over all my friends that don't have their dads, physically or spiritually or emotionally, don't have a father, especially two in Florida. One whose dad is physically not there because he passed away. And she became an incredibly strong, great woman out of that. And one whose dad isn't spiritually there, but she also became a incredibly strong spiritual woman out of that experience. And I did this blessing over 3 little girls in Florida who mean the absolute world to me. I love them like my own children. I can't even explain it, but it's just always been that way. So I gave my children a blessing. I gave those 3 little girls a blessing. And you can do this for boys and girls, but it might be slightly different. So you can take a prayer shawl or a towel or a sheet or your favorite jacket or your military coat or whatever you have that something symbolizes who you are as a man. And like every man is supposed to be a king and a priest upon the earth, and a provider, protector, kinsman, redeemer, and a teacher. So you take your prayer shawl or your towel or your jacket or whatever and put over the head of the said fluffy child. And there's different ways to pray in Hebrew, but you can just take your hands and do it any way you want. But this is something Jews do. It symbolizes the name of God, or you just take your regular hands if you're not comfortable with that. And say, Yahweh, I I come before you to stand in for a missing father, either physically, emotionally, or mentally, or spiritually. Or as a father, I'm standing in as a father to intervene in this person's life, this child's life, this woman's life, this son's life, this man's life. Let's start over. We'll do a Yahweh. Ask Yahweh to let you stand in as a father, or ask Yahweh to let you stand as a kinsman redeemer. Because sometimes father is not exactly appropriate, but you can do it as a kinsman redeemer for someone your own age, or for a woman, or a son, a man, a boy, someone who you wouldn't be a father to, but you could be a kinsman redeemer for, like an older brother that has to redeem his siblings out of slavery or out of danger, to rescue them, cover them, protect them, provide for them, lead them. So Yahweh, I ask you to allow me to stand in spiritually for this child who has no father. I ask you to protect them from all evil. I ask you to show them your ways, to guide them by your Torah, to guide them by your spirit, to keep all evil thoughts, all evil intentions, all evil people, and all evil forces far from them all their days. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen. And you can do like a blessing, like this individual child. I guess my oldest daughter, Aliana, I'd be like, Aliana, so I want you to know your daddy loves you very much. And Yahweh made you beautiful, and he made you smart, and he made you adventurous, so you can go on adventures with him, and he made you a leader, so you can lead other people to follow him. And that's why it's important you don't run away from him. That's why it's important. If you come away from Yahweh, you always return. And your name is Aliana, so you can show other people how to return as well. And that's like a brief example. I knew a little girl named Eliza, and it's Yahweh. She was named Joy in Hebrew because she brings so much joy to her mother and everyone around her. And if it was my daughter Shema, I would say, Shema, we named you Shema so you should hear and obey. And God gave you a special gifting to hear his voice for yourself and other people. And he made you beautiful and strong, and he made you creative to love animals and take care of his creation. And he made you to make things beautiful because you make everything beautiful around you. And your daddy sees it and he's very proud of you. And you can, just do what you know about the child. And you can also do it for boys, for like a boy or like an older man, even like some man 5 or 6 years younger than you. So Yahweh, I ask you to allow me to stand in as kinsman redeemer for this man. And I ask you to protect him from all evil intentions, forces, and beings. And I ask you to make him the protector, the provider, the shepherd, the teacher, and the priest you intended him to be, and instill in him the strength and the confidence he could do these things, and to put men in his life that will teach him how to do these things. In Yeshua's name. And there's like a redemption prayer. It's like a father's blessing. But you can ask this person, do you want to stand up as a kinsman redeemer and ask this person to be redeemed from addiction, be redeemed from fear, be redeemed from depression and anxiety? Because those called to like a priesthood, the ministry, you're given a double portion of the Spirit, a double portion of understanding, you're given a double portion of leadership. The oldest was always given a double portion, not to hog it, not to say, look at me, but to pass that on, to use that resource, that extra resource, to redeem those in your circle of influence, even not your blood relatives, in your circle of influence. So that's the Father's blessing. In summary, if you look up John Paul Jackson, the Father's blessing, there's a half-hour teaching that explains it more, and there's a two-minute teaching, which gives you an example. And just be good to the kids in your life. Hug them, love on them, and tell them who they are. You can buy them stuff all day, but that doesn't tell them who they are. Things don't. You be the one to tell them who they are. I love you all. Take good care of your kids. Take good care of everybody else's kids, too. And I'll tell you stories about that one day with my mom and the spaghetti at the trailer park, but that's a whole other story. Much love to you all, and to my friends who have lost their fathers. Yahweh will send you more. He always brings more of what was lost. So ask him for spiritual fathers. In Yeshua's name. Amen.